All right, hi everyone. This is the video for week 2. We had 2 readings due this week, so we will be covering the Eves and Leathers 2007A and the Cavaco Muffler Mujtaba. I don't know how to say that, sorry, from 2012. So let's go ahead and start with the Eves and Leathers. This week was all about personal appearance and how it does communicate things and how it's very important what it communicates. Um, so typically we think that personal appearance communicates little meaning to others and that others don't really focus on it, but that could not be further from the truth. Um, our personal appearance communicates a lot, and that can be how we wear our hair, how we do our makeup, what clothes we're wearing, jewelry. um, Personal appearance can include tattoos, right? So it can be things that we do to our body, but it can also be things that, we're just kind of born with that we have no control over. Um, nose size, symmetry, proportionality, all of those matter when it comes to personal appearance. So it's terrible to say, but attractive individuals tend to be better liked. They do tend to get better jobs. They do tend to have increased self esteem as well as more social power. And this is all when it is compared to unattractive people, right? Because we've heard this saying, and it was in the Cavaco article, um, sex sells. It's a sad world we live in, but Americans especially have this idea. And this idea of attractive individuals, ooh, sorry, my eye started twitching, extends to all ages. It extends to both sexes and all lifestyles, our personal lifestyles as well as our professional lifestyles. Um, so, what you wear to work is important. And studies have expressed this idea in adults as well as children. And that was something that I thought was interesting. But like thinking back about those popular kids in grade school, they had the popular clothes, they wore the popular clothing brands, and they were better liked. When I was growing up, Hollister was the cool clothing company to wear. And if you couldn't afford Hollister, you really probably weren't considered one of the cool kids. So there is strong and widespread research that supports the importance of personal appearance. Um, our personal appearance is very important, and it does communicate a lot about us and how we interpret others. So think about cosmetics, right? Um, I had to teach today, so because I'm making this video during the week rather than on Sundays, so my makeup is done, my hair is straightened, but I mean, just in the cosmetics that I have on, and I don't wear a ton of makeup, but I'll spend a little bit more money for a good foundation. I'll spend a little bit more money for a mascara that doesn't make my eyelashes look like spider legs, right? Cosmetics are huge. And there are men that wear cosmetics as well, but typically that's something that is geared towards women. Um, and this is because Americans, especially, have this idea of feminine and femininity and beauty in women. I'll get to that in a little bit. Think about clothing lines. I talked about Hollister just a little bit ago, but thinking about all the clothing lines that, these are the cool and upcoming trends. These are the cool fashions. These are the cool brands. Those are important. Cosmetic surgery, Botox. We get wrinkles in our forehead, but instead of living with them, we go get injections. We get injections to make our lips bigger, nose jobs, facelifts. People were tattooing their eyebrows on. Then there's this idea of we don't have to tattoo them on, we can just do them with our makeup. Um, and now there's microblading. And even beyond that, people who get their eyebrows waxed, right? That's another thing that is beautiful or attractive in our society. Beyond cosmetics and the cosmetic industry, think about TV shows. There are TV shows that are geared specifically to attractiveness. Now, extreme home makeover is one that is geared towards attractiveness. That's more on space, but it does still communicate about you and your sense of design. Um, but we have makeover shows. Queer Eye was another that dealt with, the territoriality. Sorry, I have trouble with that word. Um, of your home, but also your wardrobe, your hair, your face, all of that. What not to wear. People would literally send in submissions. My friend dresses like an idiot. Fix them. Right? That's horrible. But that was a big thing in our society. Our appearance helps communicate and establish our social identity. So I know personally when I'm not dressed up to teach class or I'm not like dressing up for any specific reason, I like yoga pants. I like big sweaters. I like to wear my Vans, right? I like to be comfortable. But that might communicate that I don't care, or that might communicate that I'm laid back. Um, think about the first thing you notice about a person you find attractive, right? For many people, it might be their facial features. It might be, a smile. I look at people's teeth, right? If your teeth are janky, and that's not necessarily something that you can fix or that was your fault. Um, I mean, like everybody's born with the teeth that they have. And braces, for the most part, are just purely cosmetic. It's not anything that, I mean, sometimes there are medical reasons, but typically it's just, I want to fix my teeth because they look janky, right? But looking at people's teeth, I also tend to look at people's shoes. Not to be like, oh, what brand are you wearing? Are they Nike? Like, I don't care about that. But I think it tells a lot about a person, especially women. If I go, I apologize. My boyfriend's playing Call of Duty in the in the basement, and yeah. So if you just heard him yell, drop the f bomb. I do apologize. But I look at shoes, especially in women. So if I go out to the bars with my friends, if I'm wearing Vans, that's going to communicate something different than if I'm wearing high heels, right? So these communicate things about our social identities. It also gives the expectations of how we're going to communicate interpersonally, right? So we might, I don't know, have you ever been told you have resting bitch face? Or have you ever been told, wow, I thought you were such a bitch and then I talked to you and you were really cool? I've been told that in my life. Apparently, my face makes it look like I'm a bitch. Again, sorry for the language. But it's one of those things that provides some context cues about how we're going to communicate. There are some features of facial attractiveness or physical attractiveness that we need to cover. Americans have a much more detailed stereotype of what physical features define beauty, and this is for women more so than men, right? When we think of beauty and we're thinking of women, we have a much more detailed stereotype and perception than we do for men. We have found that Americans are consistent with universal features about what is beautiful in faces. And Americans are better at defining facial beauty than bodily beauty, right? So while we have this idea of total beauty, Americans are much better at defining what they think is beautiful facially. Moving with facial attractiveness, we have symmetry. This is how well your left side matches your right side, right? So there's a trend on TikTok where it tells you to invert your camera, and your left side of your face actually goes to the right side, and it looks uneven. Symmetry is really hard to match. I mean, everybody's faces are not even. Proportionality. Parts of the face and body are supposed to be proportional to one another in a desirable way. So with the face, typically from the top of your head to the point of your nose, that's supposed to take up 2/3 of your face. And then this is supposed to be the final third, right? So typically it'd be here, here, here. That's supposed to be proportional. With many faces, they are proportional, but there are some faces that are not. But facial attractiveness relies on this symmetry and proportionality. There's been surgeries called the beauty mask, and that is to increase facial beauty to match symmetry and proportionality stereotypes to make a face more beautiful. And higher facial attractiveness is often going to increase the perception of higher um, personal qualities outside of attractiveness. So, oh, they're beautiful, they must be really smart too. Or, oh, they're beautiful, they must be really kind or really good at something, right? This is called the halo effect. And we think that beautiful people have all of these desirable qualities when it's not necessarily true. Just because you're beautiful doesn't mean you have all the other desirable qualities. Bodily attractiveness. We have somatyping, and this is just classifying people based on their body types. So we've got endomorphic. These people tend to be soft or described as soft, typically fat, and typically shorter for their body proportions. Mesomorphic. These people tend to either be bony or have an athletic build, but they have average height. And then ectomorphic, these people tend to be thin, frail, fragile. They're typically tall for their body type. Moving forward, we also talk about the hip or the waist to hip ratio, and this is important to define bodily attractiveness for women. Typically, we define bodily attractiveness for men as broad shoulders, but for women, we talk about the waist to hip ratio, that hourglass shape. That's important. And thankfully, our media messages are slowly, I can't even say surely, but slowly getting away from that this type of body is beautiful and we're getting into all bodies are beautiful. Curvy bodies, non-curvy bodies, they're all beautiful. They all have things in there. They're all attractive in their own way. But we often rely on this waist to hip ratio. Moving forward for body image, this is the mental picture we have of bodies, so ours and others. We can talk about comparisons, so upward social comparisons, meaning people who look better than us, we compare ourselves to them, and that can kind of be bad for our mental health unless it's an attainable goal, right? Um, there's also downward social comparisons. I look at people who are worse off than me and I feel better about myself, but again, that's not good for our own personal and or mental health. But with body image, we also talk about, sorry, body awareness. So how aware are we of our own personal bodies? Boundary articulation, um, the boundaries that we have of our bodies, attention to major parts of our bodies. So our arms, our shoulders, our stomachs, our hips, things of that nature. Evaluation of our own bodies. Are you very self critical of your body? Are you just critical enough that it's motivating? Are you not critical at all? Perception of size. My arms, I mean, I have personally a lot of negative self talk. Most of it does not involve body image or body dysmorphia, although that is a very common thing with talking about size. My arms are too big, my stomach's too big, my shoulders are too broad, things like that. Perception of our own masculinity or femininity. So, how feminine do I perceive myself to be? How masculine do I perceive myself to be? And then the anxiety experienced about our own bodies. These are important because that impacts our body image, right? So, body image is a really big deal with personal appearance and how not only do we perceive ourselves, but how we portray ourselves. So moving forward, we also have body cathexis or cathexis. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that. So if anybody knows, just let me know. This is the amount of satisfaction or dissatisfaction with your own body, right? So we deal with, I'm not happy with how my body looks. I should work out. I should do this. Sorry, I'm getting so sleepy. So the amount of dissatisfaction or satisfaction. Body distortion is distorting our body and our own mind. So, what we see in the mirror as worse off or better off than it actually is, right? We distort this picture. And this leads to body dysmorphia. Then we talk about dating. So, with the matching hypothesis and personal appearance, we typically look for dating and marriage partners with similar attractiveness levels to us. So, if you think that you are a 6 out of 10 on the attractiveness scale, right? That's what you perceive yourself to be. That is going to be, you're going to try and match with somebody who's maybe a 5, maybe a 7, ideally a 6. We try to match with people based on what we perceive our own attractiveness level to be. Okay. And then we talk about clothing, or they do in this chapter. So, clothing can really communicate our credibility. Um, I mean, 9 times out of 10, you see professors and they're in dress clothes, right, when they're teaching because they want to be credible. Um, I know right now I'm going against the grain. I'm in a sweater and yoga pants. I'm sitting on my couch, but it's different when it's videos. Our clothing can communicate likability. So, how likable are we? It can communicate interpersonal attractiveness. So maybe you follow the fashion trends. Maybe your face matches what facial attractiveness is. But it can also communicate dominance, right? So I don't know, having power within an organization based on what you wear. Think of it like this. When you were on campus for an undergraduate program, your professor dressed at least one step above what students dress like, right? Students show up in sweatpants, maybe some of them wear jeans, hair in a bun on top of their head. That's totally acceptable. But I can't come in and teach like that. I know I just said that I'm in a sweater and yoga pants, but when I'm teaching in person, I can't dress like that. So we pay attention to those things. So that's the end of the Eves article. A lot of the stuff that we covered in that, the Cavico article covered as well. So switch to that reading. Um, excuse me, personal appearance and organizations. So this is huge. Oh my gosh, sorry. So sex sells, right? We know this. This is not a new concept to us. Um, but so does sexiness. And there's a fine line between, looking good and being attractive and being credible at work to crossing that line and being too much. Again, sorry if you can hear him dropping the F bomb. I apologize. But businesses, employers, and organizations really rely on good looking employees to survive and prosper. Okay, so I told y'all how I work at a pizza place as well, right? Um, thinking about that, and this necessarily isn't for my pizza place to survive, but females tend to do better if they look better, right? You get tipped more. We also see people drop phone numbers on checks and stuff that like they're they think their waitress is attractive, so they give them their phone number and hopefully with a good tip or whatever. But attractiveness sells. And so it's really important. Think about news anchors, right? I mean, like a lot of news anchors are middle aged white men, but they're not unattractive. They're not hideous. We don't see what we would call ugly people on TV. And say you have a really good voice. I've got a face for radio, right? We've heard that saying. It's really important. So maybe you want to work in that industry. Attractiveness does matter. What you wear, how you style your hair, if you wear makeup, um, if you have your nails done, that stuff is important. And if you don't meet that criteria, you may be um, dropped out as a candidate for a position. The next big part of this article that I want to talk about is the employee at will doctrine. And in the US, this states that as long as there's no contractual provisions, you can be fired for really any reason, good, bad, ugly. Um, it's not just based on I'm doing my job poorly. Appearance can play a role in firing. So you don't look good, you don't dress the part. Um, that plays a big role. There are discriminations that we can't discriminate based on this in an organization. So, like age, sex, race. But this has nothing to do with appearance. So, if you're not attractive, one, they may not even hire you. Two, if you're not attractive and you're not dressing the part or you're not doing as well at your job as you could be, that can be grounds for removal from the position. So I know this sounds like super dark and it's like, oh my God, what? Like it just sounds really negative, but this is the world that we live in. So yeah, our appearances really do communicate a lot about who we are. And I'm so sorry. I get really annoyed when he plays his video games because all he does is scream downstairs. Like, I love him, I do. But, like, you don't need to yell into your headset. Oh, sorry, that was a rant. Um, but appearance is really important for not only our personal communication, but what others perceive about us. Okay, so keep that in mind. Make sure you get your discussion questions done. And yeah, have a great rest of your week.